Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining InnoDays’21 webinar, LNG and Bio LNG as a transition fuel. InnoDays events are a sequence of seminars organized by Motors Foundation and Actia Forum, dedicated to innovation in alternative fuels, energy, maritime transport and ports, and digitalization. I'm Emil Warowski, Managing Director of Motors Foundation, and we moderate the webinar today. Today's edition, we will focus on LNG, from LNG to Bio LNG, greenhouse gas emission targets, LNG supply network, and LNG propulsion systems. The webinar's partner today is Varsila, Finland, and the presentation will be given by Mr. Kai Portin, General Manager, Sustainable Fuels and Decarbonization. We will also have presentations from Mr. Adam Niklevsky, DNV, Mr. Jan Schubert from Liquid Marine, and Mr. Krzysztof Czerski, Seatech Engineering. After a short break, we will continue with a discussion panel chaired by Mr. Radosław Kubiszewski, DNV, and Vice President of the Polish LNG and Bio LNG platform. All our fellow speakers will join the discussion panel today and contribute to the key topics: regulations, future compliance, and financial consequences for the main concern, the ship owners. LNG, logistics and supply chain challenges, and some of the additional costs for blending Bio LNG into the LNG. I would like to also mention the supporting partners. Today, we have the Polish LNG and Bio LNG platform as a supporting partner, and Baltic Port Organization. Our media partners for today is Gospodarka Morska and Baltic Transport Journal. So without further delay, I would like to just address our guests today, participants. Dear guests, please share your comments and discussion and questions to the speakers by using the chat section on the YouTube channel. Your question will be forwarded to our fellow speakers and they will be answered. So to move on our agenda today, I would like to introduce our first speaker. It's Mr. Adam Niklevsky, regional expert on alternative fuels at DNV. And I would like to introduce his keynote speech, which will touch on the main topic of today's webinar, LNG and Bio LNG as a transition fuel, the future of the greenhouse gas emission targets, IMO sulfur regulations, and compliance of LNG and LNG vessels. So, Adam, if you can hear me, the stage is yours and you can start your presentation now.
Thank you, Emil. First of all, good morning to everybody, the listeners, the participants, and the speakers. I'd just like to confirm that the presentation is well seen on the screen, and if I receive yes, then yes, we will go ahead.
We can see.
Yeah. So as it was introduced, I have a big pleasure to present a keynote speech, which is quite complex, as we will try to share with the audience. First of all, the GHG emission targets, the IMO ambitions, and after all, I will give the LNG in that context, the position of LNG, and that in that context, and also share some information how it is about the SOX self-regulation after all. So what nowadays we are facing, it's definitely the energy transition, and it doesn't refer only to the maritime sector. So these changes, oh, sorry, I'm just one thing to, sorry. Yeah, so these changes are exposing the shipping industry to more risk than it has seen in many years, and at a more fundamental level. When a vessel was planned 50 or 20 years ago, the choices were much simple. Size and cargo types varied, as did market drivers, but there was essentially only one choice of fuel and propulsion system. Today, the question of the propulsion technology, the fuel to be used, and even the crewing is much more complex. These are many uncertainties to consider when investing in new tonnage, but without a doubt, today's ship owners face more change in the near future than at any time in recent memory. So I'd like to present in principle how many parties are actually involved in this revolution we are facing. So from the one side, we have ship owners and his decision on the technology, and of course the regulatories which brought these new ideas, new ambitions, which actually on the ground level has to be dealt by the ship owners. But from the other sides, behind the ship owners, there is the society, there is the employees, which also face these big changes. We have, of course, more local regulation, like EU, for example, with the package Fit for 55, and then we've got the investors, as the ship owners has to leverage somehow the investment which are needed. So there is a risk assessment needed from their side. And then we have also the bodies like a sea cargo charter, or the Poseidon principles, let's say the league of the financial institution. So the question is, how will look the ships of the future? So this is one of the visualization performed, as you can see, by the Stena. So definitely it will change dramatically, because we will need to deal with the new fuel tanks like LNG or liquid hydrogen. We of course need to consider the carbon, the dioxide carbon to be somehow transport if we are using the carbon capture on board the vessel. And then we have this the left space for the products, solid or fluid or chemical. So and of course some supporting elements, some support energy infrastructure, like solar panels, like wind assistance system with the Flettner rotors, or the modern sails, definitely are the ones which has to be considered. But especially when we are talking about the LNG vessels, that will be also necessary, the change in the future designs, which will come from the EEDI and EEXI requirements, which I will explain a little bit more in the details later on. But what can be nowadays considered very sure, let's say, definitely the hull shape, so the efficiency of the hull design. Definitely the propulsion system is one of the elements which to be considered, and some additional system like a bulb under the hull, which decrease the wave influence. So in principle, the graph, which I believe most of the audience is well familiar with. So just to remind, by 2030, the IMO aims to reduce vessel carbon emission per transport work at least 40%, and it's targeting a 70% reduction for 2050. This should be done in parallel with overall reduction of greenhouse emissions by 50% across the sector. So what is also important, especially nowadays, let's say it's one of the hot topic, which it is the carbon intensity index and energy efficiency existing design of the vessel index. So for the managers' point of view, they must determine ship's carbon intensity profile and develop an optimized ship energy efficiency management plan by the end of the 2020. One another graph which might possibly known by some of the audience is the fuel mix of the fourth propulsion revolution, which we are now facing. So according to the DNV outlook, it seems that LNG, which is one of the topic today, definitely will play an important role in and reach about the 41% of the future fuel mix, which is very significant, and that can be also seen later on one of the slides when I will present the current order book. So of course, this revolution gave us other alternative than the LNG, and but we also need to remember that if we are talking about the other energy carriers, most of them nowadays are still depend on the production on the hydrogen in the steam reforming process. So the methane is a key element, as long as the green hydrogen is not yet still so available at the level price which is acceptable, which is another factor. But go to more detail on the latest Marine Environment Protection Committee, so-called MEPS 76. It's been decided that the CII, so to remind, the carbon intensity index reduction was set to increase by 2% per year in the years 2023 to 2026. After that, what will be next, that will be decided later on, and I will present the full time frame for the common decision. What is also important in the context of today's webinar on the latest IMO MEPS committee, it was also more detail given to the on the NOx technical code. So there is now the unified interpretation to the technical code 2008. So the clarified requirements for testing and certification of engine with selective catalytic reduction system. So in simple words, with the catalyzers on board the vessel. And what is also important, it was decided that due to time constraints, further work on air pollution and energy efficiency was deferred to the next session, which will be held this month. What is important to remember, to note maybe, there is some significant dates, critical dates. So the session performed, and it was performed in June. In September 2020, to the completion of EEXI assessment and adoption has to be completed. And in the December, the development of the CII profile and enhanced SAMP as well has to be completed by the ship owners. And the effective date, entry into force effective date is January 1st, 2023 for both of these factors. On the slides which now I show, I promise to give you some more systematic time frame. So here, except the IMO regulation on the GHG and the carbon oxide, it's been also added our local European Union ambitions and regulation, which go parallel to the IMO. So it's important that now we have this EU climate law proposal. Now we know it's called Fit for 55. The taxonomy and the numbers especially will be decided next year. And in 2023, it will be as well come into force if we are talking about the, for example, emission ETS. I mean the ETS handling and the details on the incentiveness to the use of the certain fuel. And nowadays, what we can see, LNG, unfortunately, is from the EU point of view in a little bit lost position. So definitely EU see the LNG as the transition fuel, but that is not necessarily, let's say, fully correct, because we are nowadays not consider the carbon capture and storage, so the sequestration of the carbon dioxide carbon, and that is due to the fact that we need to develop the infrastructure to storage the dioxide carbon for the future and further processing for the synthetic fuels. And I believe the other lecturers for today will give more details on the synthetic LNG and its future. What is important in 2025, that goes to the IMO first, the EEXI and the CII principles and the data will be reviewed. And the next factors, the next numbers for the next year after 2027 will be decided. And at the same time, the EU will reconsider the rates for the emission trade system. So in 2027, based on the decision in 2025, that will be the possible effective date of the new numbers. So just to summarize the first part of my presentation about the decarbonization transformation. So it's about 1 billion ton GHG gases which have to be zero within end of the century. One more time, 70% reduction on carbon intensity within 2050 and 40% reduction carbon intensity in 2030. That will require more than IMO regulation, and here locally the European Union give a hand or is a forefront of this more ambitious and more regulated, more detailed regulated solutions. Definitely that will be the big need for the investments, which is assessed on the 1 or even 2 trillion US dollars till 2050. And what is also important, there is nowadays on the IMO agenda, the research and development fund, which will be financed from the, let's say, a kind of a tax on the each ton on the future fuel oil, and as well what we can nowadays see from the market-based measures, if we want to capture the CO2 and utilize it in a effective way. Unfortunately, the price of that is calculated for $1,000 US per ton. Nowadays, we know it's about 60 euros. So more or less, unfortunately, we are heading this kind of prices. And we have, of course, the wider than the maritime, the strategy of the EU so-called Green Deal, which will, of course, influence the other sectors except the maritime. What is after that? Let me remind the first slide. For the sustainable charterers, banks, and finers, there will be a lot of work to be done, and definitely some incentiveness received based on the decision they made will be critical. So if I can ask how much time I have left, so we will not skip the time frame.
You still have around 15 minutes.
15 minutes, that sounds perfect. So let's go for a more practical point of view, because the first part was more on the regulation part, but what it means in practice. So in practice, it means that each owners has to develop their decarbonization path, which theoretically looks like that. But as we know, the real life is not so easy. So we need to put some dates and some more sophisticated structure on this graph to that gives the real reflect to the real life. So if we have the vessel example vessels, and we made some measures to reduce energy efficiency index of the vessel, one of the easiest is the speed reduction. And then we face the to face the 2023, we place the vessels like that, but that is not enough. So as you see, we have these grades on the CII on operational efficiency. So the requirements will be more strict, and the vessel, unfortunately, will need as well to be adopted to the new requirements almost year by year, or it can be done once, but with the higher capex. So our example vessel, which has the class period in 2026, the next one, so possible dry dock and some more improvements. In this example, it's been exchanged the propeller, and also it was given the nozzle, the Mewis duct type, which plays on the CII level to the class A in 2026. But the time passed, we have some improvement plan. The vessel by the time is also getting old, so it's from machinery point of view that the effectiveness decrease with the age, so that will be necessary some improvement plan, or it can be solved by the conversion or the new building, considering change to the alternative fuel. So and then all this iteration has to be reconsidered as long as the life of the vessel. So what is important for the ship owners? The importance are the one more time. These are the dates which are present previously. So just a small refreshment. The SAMP on board, January 1st. This is the first milestone which has to be faced with. After that, on 31 of March, so 3 months later, the first CII reporting and rating has to be performed, and then EEXI by first AAPP survey up to end of the 2023. And how DNV in this stormy, let's say, environment of the new regulation, new requirements, and a lot of actions needed, how DNV can help them, their customers. First of all, in 2017, we have developed a carbon robust ship offer, which is one of that is competitive and thrives in any decarbonization scenario. The core of the carbon robust model lies in evaluating different fuels and technology options by comparing by break-even cost, the minimum rate that a ship must secure to cover all costs of a design, to that of the competing fleet of the future ships under different scenarios. Nowadays, it's been even more developed to the so-called decarbonization stairway, how to be dealt with. So this is one of the DNV offer which might help to navigate within this new market waves. So just to give you the example on the break-even rates, different type of the propulsion, like monofuel diesel, monofuel ammonia ready, dual fuel engines with LNG, or dual fuel LNG ammonia ready. Different scenarios has been considered, which gives us different paths. I'm sorry, I'm too quick. So if you combine with this curve, which is actually the CII requirements, then we may support the owners with the calculation and basis for the decision to be made. What is important on this calculation, and I'd like to be honest on that, as the ETS trade rates are not yet established, so no benefits from CO2 sales is considered, but if only that will be established, then we of course will adjust our model on that part. In principle, how does it work? The set of fuels and technology choices for the vessels now we are talking about the new buildings, needs to be selected, and then we estimate the CO2 emissions and the total annual costs, what was presented on the previous slides, and the fuel prices and CO2 tax levels can be changed from presets level, what was also presented by me. What is also important, the definition of the competing fleet, because that's consists of ships currently operating and of ships being added to the fleet in the years to come. So the time progress, the future fleet is constructed by scrapping ships and building new ones. So the number of ships to be scrapped and built is governed by the scenario description. So it also gave us a strategic point of view how to handle our fleets. This graph I'd like to show you as possible potential CO2 emission action. It's divided in 5 different categories: the hull design, the power and propulsion system, alternative fuels, alternative energy sources, and the operation. So on the hull design, as the time is quite limited, I will not go much more in the details, but for example, air lubrication of the hull, it was one of the points which might be considered, and the hull shape that was presented on one of the first slides. Hull coating, I will show you one of the example in the next slide as well. Then we can change on the propulsion system, for example, the nozzles. And then very important, the alternative fuels. Here I have considered the LNG and the biofuels, especially Bio LNG, which can be easy blended with the, let's say, conservative LNG might give a lot of benefits, especially in the light of the EU regulation, when if the at least at the stage of the hearing on the EU, on the Fuel EU Maritime Directive, it's one of the acts which consider the fuel as well to wake. It's the first act which consider the fuel in the full full scenario from the harvesting to the propulsion. So it might give a lot of advantages in that case. And of course, the supporting energy sources received from the renewables like wind, solar, cold ironing. This is, from my point of view, quite interesting. For me, it was rather the shore connection, the common name, but now we come back to the historical name called ironing, direct fuel cells, and other. And of course, then we have some possibility on the logistic on that of the vessel. So it's just interesting point as to be understand what the cold ironing is. So it is simple. In simple words, is just a short connection when the vessel stay in at the pier. Just a couple of examples how we can deal with. ESD, energy saving devices. So that is might be nozzles, air bubbles, another type of the air generator by the hull shape. It can be, of course, the additional treatment of the coating with the regular cleaning and polishing, and of course the correct pitch propeller and combined with the rudder system. The other solution, it can be the engine power limitation, either in the digital way control, either the mechanical, physical stoppers. Electrification and digitalization, definitely, it is a kind of the improve of the energy efficiency of the vessel. Here we have a stack of the batteries with the battery management system. It can be the hybrid propulsion in that case, which is not it's already, let's say, well known, but definitely this position will grow up. And definitely without the digitalization, if we will not support ourselves with the digital tool on the steering of the propulsion and improve the ship route, that will be not to be handled only by the men. Supporting of the digital tools is critical and definitely necessary for the future. Of course, we as a class society support this transformation, but definitely through the ensuring the safety. I'd like to go. I will skip to the next slides because I'd like to touch at least the last part of the topic to this keynote speech. But before that, I'd like to present a couple of the tools which we offer at the DNV. It's the Fuel Boss application. It's the alternative fuel insight platform, which you are very welcome to have a look on. That's also include the LNG fuel finder. So very useful tool in a respect of the LNG user as a propulsion. Then we of course offer the LNG risk assessment and the bunkering procedures. We of course approve the technology, which is our core activity. And of course, for the already customers, all other tools which can be found on the Veracity portal. So just to touch more detail on the LNG and the question in the topic, if we are talking about the SOx, so sulfur oxide, LNG is by definition sulfur-free fuel. It's a little bit different if we are talking about the nitrogen oxides. Definitely, if we are talking about the internal combustion engine, the GHG reduction is assessed between 20 to 25%, but it might differ if we use the LNG in the fuel cell, not in the internal combustion engine, because then we lost the bad impact of the methane slip, which in the fuel cell do not occur. So it can be even better results with the LNG as a fuel without the capture of the dioxide carbon, which we are well known. This technology is ready, and some example of installation is in place. I'm going to the end. Just to show you one more thing, the LNG now in the order books is the significant position, 6.10% on the full order book on the new builds. And regarding the SOx statutory regulation, there's still in force the carriage ban, which are given by the MARPOL Annex 6 regulation 13, as I remember. And for the LNG, there is nothing changed because, as said, it is a sulfur-free fuel. If we're talking about the marine diesel oil propeller vessels, now the sampling points, this is the elements which come into force already with the renewal of the IAPP certification. DNV supports, one more time, on the SOX, especially dedicated offer is the DNV fuel changeover calculator, which might be very helpful. In just to summarize, citate of the Brittany Ferries chief executive, LNG is just a step. We are fully conscious it won't solve it, but it improves. Those that use LNG show how committed we are to the decarbonization, because it is a step forward, but we are all conscious it is a step. So just to show that something which is not, LNG is not a perfect solution, but definitely it's a good step forward. And I would like to leave you with this message for the next presentation. Thank you for the time. And just another thought, if you thought the shipping was boring, look out for the challenge of the decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Adam, thank you with that interesting note at the end. And as well, of course, thank you for the very extensive and excellent presentation, touching on all the key topics, what we need to know now, currently, and for the future up to 2050. We don't have any questions, concrete ones from the audience now, but I'm sure at the discussion panel we will have some towards you. And now I would like to continue further on our agenda. I would like to invite, on behalf of our partners today, Varsila Finland, Mr. Kai Portin, our General Manager, Sustainable Fuels and Decarbonization, to give more light on the path to carbon neutrality from LNG to bio LNG. Kai, if you can hear us, the stage is yours. You can begin your presentation, please.
Yeah, I hope you can see my presentation now. And
yes, we can see it.
Well. Good. Yes, thank you for having me here. And thank you, Adam, for a very nice presentation. And I have to say to start with that you will hear a lot of repetition now from what Adam just talked about. But I try to be short on those repetitions, but you will see that from Wärtsilä, from the engine's point of view that I will talk about, we are very much in line with what Adam was talking about. And we are looking at the same issues as was mentioned. And repetition is good. That is the mother of the knowledge, isn't it? So bear with me when it's the same things coming up. I will talk mostly about what we do with the thing that you see here on the right. It's the engine and how we prepare our engines for the future, and now mainly today from LNG to bio LNG. Myself, I have always been testing and developing engines, so that is my area, and I look it from the world from the engines point of view. Adam showed this is what the IMO targets are for the future. And we have been reading this now for 2 years, what are the targets for reduction in CO2 emissions to 2030 and then further on to 2050. And when looking, Adam was also showing one scenario on how to come to the targets in 2050. Now I have taken then from the newest, I think the newest DNV, the path towards 2050, and also then just to show that there are other way of thinking also in the world. I have also taken them from UMass Tristan Smith scenario. And some people believe in LNG, natural gas, as the takeover, and then also a part here as bioenergy and synthetic LNG. And then there are others that don't believe in it at all. What does this say to us? It says that we have to look into the future, how to get through the transition, how to come to the the net zero emissions, carbon-free emissions, CO2-free emissions. And how we look at it is that today we start with what we have. And then when we start to get new fuels, first we take drop-in fuels that we can utilize in the infrastructure we have and together with the fuel that we have. Then we are also looking into to blend fuels either before the engine, so on the vessel, or then in the cylinder of the engine, so you run on several fuels at the same time. And then in the future, when we start to get the, how should I say, the better fuels, then we can, when they are in quantity and when they are in price and when they are to the legislation and cost also beneficial to use for everyone, then we are ready to take them in our engines. How do we do this then? Here on the left, I have the answer. It's the multi-fuel engine. It's to be flexible, because we cannot decide on when the new fuels come in, what will they cost, what will the legislation be. But anyhow, for the future, we must be clear on that vessel you buy today, that should also be able to use for 20, 30 years ahead, at least. Here then I have my flexible engine in our laboratory here in Finland, in Vaasa. And as you can see, this is I don't know if you can see it, but this is looks like a standard diesel gas engine that we have at Wärtsilä. We have now in this engine, we have prepared it for most of the fuel by having 3 separate fuel systems. So we have a pilot fuel system. If you have a fuel that is not burning or igniting so well, then we can ignite it first with a pilot fuel, so you can get it to burn in the cylinder and then use the secondary fuel or the main fuel for the whole combustion. Then we have a high pressure fuel system where we can have in principle all the liquid fuels that are available, and we can then use it in the engine just like a diesel engine. And then we have a third fuel system. It's the gas system here on top. So here we can then utilize gaseous fuels like LNG or natural gas, and also other ones that you see here on the list. The good thing here is that this also includes bio and synthetic fuel. As such, the engine doesn't know if it's a synthetic fuel or if it's a fossil fuel. It looks at the molecule itself. And this is then very important for us when looking into the future, how to go and what fuels to use today. And as we are mostly today talking about how to take in bio LNG into fossil LNG, and perhaps in the future also to use synthetic LNG. This is a very important one. We see that we have, for future fuels, we have 2 main streams. We have, today you either go gas, and then when you get biogas or biomethane, bio LNG, LBG, whatever you call it, then you can easily take it in. And then when you also get synthetic LNG in the future, you can also take it in. This is already today, as was shown by Adam, by using LNG, it's today the cleanest fossil fuel that we have. And then by taking in bio and synthetic methane, then we can also be carbon neutral. The same path we can without then changing the infrastructure on the vessel and on the bunkering, as it's one-to-one. Then the second stream, mainstream, is that we have today diesel, heavy fuel engines and vessels, and these can also take in biodiesel, bio heavy fuel types of fuel when it comes, and also synthetic liquid fuels when they come. And here is also, if you have drop-in fuels that can be used, these can also be taken in. Then also we are at Wärtsilä, we will not discuss it too much today, but also looking into zero carbon fuels like hydrogen and ammonia, and also then green alcohols, methanol, ethanol, etc. So the future for taking bio to go from LNG to bio LNG, that is already here. Today, we have fossil LNG as a starting point, and we make fossil or methane natural gas to LNG and then utilize it in the vessels. But we can also then add bio LNG to any ratio. So if we get 5% of bio LNG, we can add that. If we get 55%, we can add that. And also then in the future, add synthetic LNG into the same vessel, the same system, and even the engine will think that this is a very good fuel. It will even think that it's better fuel than what it had when it had fossil LNG or fossil natural gas. One thing that I think Adam took up that was a very good thing that you seldom hear nowadays. We are now talking about CO2 emission, greenhouse gas, and so on. But we should never forget that we also have local emissions. We have NOx, we have SOx, we have particulates that are polluting the air. And this is very important for the people living in the world, in the cities and at the harbors, to have a clean air to breathe. And now when we are looking into the greenhouse gas emissions, so looking at CO2, methane slip, and perhaps also laughing gas slip that can also come from using, for example, ammonia as fuel and other ways also. We at Wärtsilä, we and the engine, we cannot just look at one or the other. And sometimes when we look at only one thing, we are forgetting the other one, and then we can even make it worse. So now when we are developing our engines, we are looking all the time, and the systems, we are all the time looking in how can we improve both of these at the same time. And this should always be remembered when we are talking about greenhouse gas, that you cannot be worse on the other things that used to be so important some years ago, just by you have a new target. This is only for remembering. It's easy to talk about only one thing at a time. And the reason, this is also why we took LNG as a fuel, gas as a fuel in our engines and vessels 20 years ago when we started this, is it was for the local emissions like NOx, SOx, and particulates. And we could see that we had a huge reduction in NOx, 80, 85, 90%, and in sulfur oxides, as there's no sulfur in the fuel, we almost removed all the sulfur SOx emissions, and also the particulates. We could see that it was a reduction about, I looked at our Viking Grace vessel here going in Finland from Turku, Åbo to Stockholm in Sweden, and there it was 93% reduction in particle emissions on the same engine running on diesel and running on gas. Then we have also then the greenhouse gas impact, and there is how you then calculate. You can calculate with the global warming potential, which is the most normal, and here I have used the GWP 100. There we have an improvement then on 5 to 15% in our engines. And then if you use another calculation, which also is in the IPCC mentioned, it's the GTP, the global temperature change potential. There you then have a more benefit of using LNG as a fuel. Then biogas, biomethane. Why should we go from fossil gas to biomethane and bio LNG? Yeah, first of all, it's renewable, and it's in this circular business model. This is what everybody knows. Then the second more important thing is that we transform waste to valuable energy by doing this. The third thing is that we can more and more have local energy supply. So we can, in our own country, we can make our own fuel also. And by that, then you will also then have a work for the people if you are looking internally what you want to do internally in your country. And then I need to. Then if we look at how then to utilize the biogas, it's that we update it first of all to biomethane and bio LNG, because that then we can directly use it, as I said before, in the infrastructure for natural gas and in the infrastructure for LNG. And this can also be used then as a green energy storage for power plants, but also then to be used in marine side. And then also here we have to unlock the potential for vehicle fuels for using gas. And then we can also see, as I said before, that we can have a domestic energy supply. What is then, why is bio LNG so good? When we look at biogas, we can see that, biogas, it contains half and half of methane and carbon dioxide. And as such, this is a low heating value fuel that could be sometimes difficult to use. But immediately when you make it when you liquefy it and make it to LBG, then you will remove all the components that the engine doesn't like, and you will remain with pure methane. And this is a very good fuel for the engine because it will be stable, it will not change over time, and also methane in our gas engine has the best combustion model that we are using, and our engines have been for a long time optimized for utilizing methane as a fuel. We will also have another part when you store LBG. Fossil gas will age, so the lighter components will go away and the heavier components will remain. But as this is only methane, then everything what is boiled off is the same as what is left in the tank. So you will not either have a issue with aging in the fuel tank on the vessel. Wärtsilä is in production of LBG. This is not my area, but I just show it as a picture here in the end that we are in this bio LNG plant in Norway, and we can then see that this is doable, and it's already started. And just to show you then in the end that how can you achieve the 2030 goal? Is it far away when we looked at to have 40% reduction in greenhouse gas or CO2 emissions by 2030? Are we far away now with our vessels and our engines? I have just made a quick calculation on the CO2 equivalent, where I have also used the methane slip, the GWP 100, as a base of calculation. And if you today take this is used on one of our engines, just as an example. If you today have it, the same engine can use HFO as fuel. So you run it on heavy fuel today, you will have a CO2 equivalent on roughly 550, 560 grams per kilowatt hour. Already by changing it to methane fuel, so this is now calculated as pure methane fuel, then you will have a reduction of CO2 equivalent by almost 20%. And then you just add bio or synthetic methane to the extent that you want and need. And in this case, I have then added 30% of biomethane. So then I can calculate away the CO2 emissions. I have not calculated away the methane slip emissions, but the CO2 emissions, because it's in circular route here. So then by adding 30% of bio gas LBG into the gas fueled vessel, then you can already today rather easily come to the minus 40%. And this is only by changing fuel. You heard from Adam that there are many other ways also to go to reduction in CO2 emissions, and this is only by changing fuel. So summary, a little bit over time, but summary, low carbon fuels, they need to be developed to achieve the future targets regarding greenhouse gas emission. So we have to get the low carbon fuels and the green fuels in to reach the targets that has been set for us. Today, natural gas is the best fossil fuel that we have, and it's a very good start already today. And then it also provides the infrastructure for taking in new gaseous fuels. And enablers, we see these three as the enablers. We see that we need to have fuel flexible engines, and we need to take in renewable fuels, both as liquid and gaseous when they come, as much as we can. And then all the hybrid solutions, if it's then like Adam talked about the shore connection, or is it the wind or whatever you have to help the vessel or the engines, all of these will then have an impact, and it's always a positive impact. And also the engines will be better by having these hybrid solutions. It can run on more optimal area then. And then last but not least, as I talked before, remember that greenhouse gas is important, but never forget the local emissions when we discuss the future of our fuels and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you for the very informative presentation. And again, thank you for repeating some of the things. It is important, as we're saying, this is the way forward. We need to repeat the things to know that this is LNG and Bio LNG is a step forward toward the long-term planning towards the decarbonization. A quick question from our YouTube channel. Could you clarify what is the meaning of oxycat and sunbed from your presentation?
Yeah, we have been for many years looking at after treatment of the methane slip, especially when we started our gas engine development. We had a lot of unburnt gas, and we then started to look at different ways how we can, by after treatment systems, burn away the unburned fuel that we have, and these are now different systems. So sandbed is a sandbed. It's a big bit of sand where that you heat up, and then you put the exhaust gas through it, and then the methane will burn into CO2. So then you get it away. And then oxycat is another way. And we have been looking at these, but the most of the work and still ongoing is to do it on the engine itself, to really burn all the fuel that you get in, because there is no use to put in good fuel and not burn it in the engine. So here we are doing still a lot of work every day to improve this, so we can get better efficiency and lower emissions.
Okay, thank you, Kay, on behalf of our partner Varsila Finland today. Please stay for the discussion panel at the end. And with that said, I would like to continue further with our next planned presentation. I would like to invite Mr. Jan Schubert from Liquid Marine, and starting from an informative presentation and forecast for the future, short and long term, and the ship owners' perspective to choose on some of the engines by Varsila and their technology. Now going to the current situation with the LNG supply network in the Baltic Sea region and the bunkery ships and FSRUs available. So Jan, if you can hear me, stage is yours. You can start now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emil. Thank you very much for the invitation. Let's share my screen so that everyone can see it. Hope that was successful.
Yes, you can see it.
And yeah, now I think I can perfectly well build up on what was said before. Actually, it's a good basis for what I want to show now. In the end, it will be a little bit more on the practical side, less theory and less about data and numbers, but more about how do we actually get the fuel from the terminal or from wherever else it is produced to the customer. And when we look into why am I talking about that, then Liquid Marine is developing infrastructure for that. We are very much focused currently on Northwest Europe. We're part of Liquid 24/7, which is developing infrastructure in general, not only for ships, but also for trucks, one of the larger networks here in the area. We're also building infrastructure for inland waterway vessels, and we are supplying customers by truck and ship in different regions of the world. And having said that, I would like to dive in directly. We heard already something about the DNV portals that provide very good information about the current situation in the market. So this graph comes from one of these portals, and it shows quite well why we actually do what we are currently doing. So there is a growing fleet of vessels. Here I focus only on the LNG part of that fleet, not on the other alternative fuels. But overall, you can see there's a significant growth, and it will continue to be like that in the next years. This is only the number of vessels that has been ordered by now or that are in operation by now. I think we will see way more of these orders coming in, especially when you look at last weeks, there were always around 30-40 vessels ordered with an LNG or a dual fuel engine every month. And I think it will continue like that. And at the same time, when we look at what type of vessels are ordered, it's basically everything from very large container ships and cruise ships to smaller tankers, fishing vessels, tugboats, offshore supply vessels. So there's a wide range of ship types, and in the end, all these vessels need their fuel, but they need a completely different setup to get their fuel. Obviously, it's something completely different if I supply 18 tons or 500 tons. And yeah, I would like to show how this is actually done these days in the Baltic Sea region, and what it might look like in the coming years. When we look at the Baltic Sea specifically, so breaking down these numbers, then we are talking about roughly 100 vessels that we will be in the water in the next years, and regularly call ports in the Baltic Sea region. And these vessels obviously need supply. Not all of them are receiving their bunker fuel in Rotterdam or somewhere else. They also want their fuel in the Baltic Sea. And when we look at the infrastructure for that is needed for that, it has to cover a very large range of demand. So basically, stating again what I said before, there is ships that have rather small consumption or rather small drop sizes that they can take because of the tank size, and then we have these very large vessels. We currently don't see these large container vessels in the Baltic Sea, but we see the cruise ships for sure. We see these tankers. We see Viking Line with their ferries, and we see also the smaller tankers operating in the area. And in the end, there's three ways to get the fuel to them, or those are the established ways. So either they bunker directly at the terminal, they get it by truck, or they receive it from a bunker vessel. And when we look at the current infrastructure that is in place in the Baltic Sea region, we have three larger terminals in place. So the one in Świnoujście in Poland, we have Klaipėda in Lithuania, and then we have Vysotsk in Russia, which is not it's less a storage terminal, it's more a liquefaction plant, but from there LNG is supplied to marine customers. And then we have a range of smaller terminals that are in operation already, especially in Sweden and Finland, and several smaller terminals that are under development or already under construction. So there is a good basis to transport LNG and make sure that customers get their fuel. When we look at bunkering, where it's actually done, then you can see it's sort of similar to where the terminals are. So in the end, bunkering is more attractive for customers the shorter the distance is from the terminal, because in the end it's a price, it has an impact on the price. So we see that these bunker locations that are in use are mostly around the Swedish terminals. In Finland, we have a few locations. We have a few locations now in Poland that have been developed over the course of the last years. And we have some spots in Germany. Other countries like Latvia, for example, don't have any activities like that. And in Lithuania, there has only been one, I think, or maybe two bunkering operations so far. So there is still some room for development, but at the same time, there is already also a substantial network for the supply of LNG. Not all of these operations are taking place in ports. So for a lot of customers, it's also very attractive to do bunkering at anchorage. So not all these dots that you see here are in a port. When we look at these three ways to get this supply to customers, which I showed before, I think the one that is utilized to the smallest amount is the direct supply from a terminal. So to my knowledge, there have been only a handful of such operations, all have been done at the terminal in Pori. There have been one or two operations in Gothenburg as well, but in the end there's a structure ship because there's no permanent storage tank on site. But those that did these operations mostly did it because they were in the port anyhow, or there was some price reason for that. But most vessels are not willing to go to a terminal if they are passing by on a shipping route. because in the end they are used to having the fuel coming to them and not the other way around. So this is it is possible, but it's not really done that often. When we look at the more popular ways to get fuel to the customers, then we have I think truck to ship, which is the obvious case, mostly for smaller vessels and those vessels that are operating on a more permanent schedule. When we look at the locations, then it's again Sweden, where especially around the terminals in the east, Nynäshamn, and in the west, and in Gothenburg, you have these operations. You have a few of these operations in Poland now, very around Swinoujstie. And in the east, when you look at Finland and Estonia, then these molecules are mostly coming from Vysotsk in Russia. In the end, it provides a lot of flexibility. You can easily provide smaller volumes for vessels. So when you look at the cost structure, then this is very attractive. But at the same time, you're also sort of limited because it's a challenge to get sufficient number of trucks to these locations. And it takes a while to unload several trucks. Since you can combine a few, you can unload 2 to 3, or maybe 4 trucks in parallel. But you will still have a significantly lower pump rate when compared to a bunker vessel. So that's why it is done, and it will remain, and it is attractive for a few vessels, but especially for the larger ones. When we look at the cruise ships or the large tankers, then this is not an option because it's just from an operational standpoint not possible to execute these operations in a timely manner. Therefore, when we look at the other way, so the bunker vessels, showing here a few examples of vessels that are operational in the area, then we see that this is already an established way to supply LNG to customers. In the end, the advantage is that these vessels are rather flexible. So wherever there's demand, you can move them to a port as long as the port allows operation. You can do it. The easiest way, honestly, is to do it at anchorage areas. Especially Sweden is very flexible when it comes to that. This way to do it actually offers you the opportunity to deliver also very large drop sizes. So you can go up to several thousand tons actually. And especially for these larger volumes, it's also in the end economies of scale that allow you then also to offer a more attractive pricing structure. But at the same time, when you just want to receive very small amounts, then it's probably not the best way to come with a bunker vessel, especially when it has to travel a long distance before it actually can conduct the operation. So it's a little bit different market than when we look at the truck supply. It's the larger vessels, especially that will get their supply through that way. The exception is the ferries in the Swedish East Coast that are receiving already supply from a small bunker vessel in Stockholm since 2013. This has a lot to do with their actually demand and the speed that they need for this bunker operation, because they only stay in port for 1 hour. And so it's more attractive to do it by ship, or it's actually necessary to do it by ship. When we look at the number of bunker vessels that are in the Baltic Sea region, that we see that there is already a significant number of vessels in operation. Those vessels are very different. So when we look at these examples here, then we have the world's first bunkering vessel, Seagas, in the lower right corner. It's compared to the others, it's tiny. It's just 160 cubic meters of LNG that it can transport actually. So it's a former car ferry operating in the port of Stockholm. It does the job. It's perfect for its purpose, and it's actually like a tailor-made solution for these ferries. But due to the very small amount of LNG that you can deliver, it's not really feasible to supply other customers with this vessel. And it always stays in the port, so it's not really moving around. And when you look at the other vessels, then you have Coraios on the upper right side or Kairos on the upper left side. Those vessels operate in a way larger area, actually. So they are not staying in one port. They are conducting operations in different ports. They're going around the Baltic Sea region, covering ports from Finland to basically up to the Norwegian coast. And when you look at the development here, then a few years ago, there were actually only 2 vessels in all of Europe, and one was Seagas in Stockholm, and the other one was, I think the vessel in Norway. I think it's also a bunker vessel that was built back then already. At the same time, when you look at the situation now, then we have a growing number of vessels. We have already 3 vessels that are always in the Baltic Sea region. We have other vessels like Coraios that is mostly staying at the Swedish west coast, but from time to time also coming to the region. And we have a growing number of vessels in the North Sea region. And when we look into the future, then there's even more vessels, with at least 5 vessels that will be permanently in the Baltic Sea area. And so there is a substantial infrastructure in place already for customers to receive LNG. At the same time, it's not like it was done, or like it is with conventional fuels, where you can get it in every port. It's still focusing a lot on the major shipping routes, on the larger ports, and so there is definitely still some room for improvement. But nevertheless, if a customer requires supply, then I think it's he can be quite certain that he will get it. In the end, summarizing the points that I've shown before, we can see that these fuels that have a potential to reduce emissions and that can help shipping to become more sustainable and fulfill also regulatory requirements, that especially LNG, it's available. And when we look at this discussion that we have about LNG regarding how long is the bridge, how long can it be a bridging technology, and what can we achieve with it, then we can see that the infrastructure is in place. The advantage that this infrastructure has is that you can actually also store bio LNG, you can use synthetic LNG, you can blend in, I think that was something we have seen also from Wärtsilä. You can blend in other fuels. You can blend in hydrogen, ammonia. They did tests with these fuels. So in the end, there's a lot of potential, not only for a short time, but for a longer time, and it actually will allow us to achieve reductions on a very short notice, and we don't have to wait several years until the sufficient infrastructure is developed, for example, for hydrogen, or the technology is actually on a level where you can do a rollout in a larger way. At the same time, these new trends, how I would like to call them, especially when we look at bio LNG and synthetic LNG, they also might have an impact on the infrastructure, because it will drive the whole focus a little bit away from larger import terminals and more towards smaller terminals, smaller liquefaction units, because this is where these fuels are actually produced. They are not produced on a large scale basis yet. And therefore, it might be that also the infrastructure will change. So it might be that there's different ports where bunkering will be done, maybe different supply chains. And but I think the industry is at a point where it is established enough to ensure supply, but at the same time still flexible enough and young enough to develop and adjust itself to these new requirements. And therefore, I would like to end my presentation with a picture from the world's first synthetic LNG bunkering operation that we have done last month. And when you look at that, you can see, okay, it's one truck, it's a start. It's definitely not established, and it's not done in all the ports. But it shows that what can be done and what will be done in the future. And I'm quite sure if we keep going with this development, and then LNG, bio LNG, synthetic LNG, or whatever type of fuel can be used in this infrastructure, has a bright future, and not only a short-term solution. Yeah, I think that's it from my side, and I'm happy to answer questions. But we can also answer questions later on in the discussion.
Jan, I would like to thank you for the great presentation, a very compact one, of course, highlighting the current overview of the terminals in the Baltic Sea region, mainly in the North Sea, and of course the bunkering ships available there. And I cannot hide Well, an excitement to see such a maps full with more and more dots in comparison to what was 10 years ago when it was all starting. So thank you once again. There are no any questions for now, but please stay with us for the discussion panel.
Sure.
So we are a bit delayed on agenda timing, but I would like to invite our next presenter, Mr. Krzysztof Czerski from Seatech Engineering, who will go into more details from the ship owner's perspective and exactly the available energy propulsion systems and the proven technology which is applicable to bio LNG as well. So Mr. Krzysztof, if you can hear me, please, you can start your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you very much, Motos Foundations, for my participation, for your kind invitation. It is a great honor for me to be here with you. Especially it's a great honor to me to be here just after such a let's say, very, very fantastic presentations made by DNV, Wärtsilä, and Liquid. So it was challenging for me to have something interesting, but however, I will do my best to not boring you so much. Let's share my screen. I will try to show you our presentation. Apologize because again I will repeat some of the information which we heard from DNV and also Wärtsilä.
It's fine,
so
thank you.
It's probably natural. It is very, very good. Let's say what Mr. Portin said, that this is natural way of the development, that we are repeating and repeating. So I hope you can see my presentation. So the first of all, the content, I would like to give you the brief information about the Seatech, and then some few, let's say, slides about the environmental challenges and also the fuel gas supply system on board the ships. Seatech Engineering is a company from Poland employing around 40 engineers, naval architects and marine engineers. We are concentrating mainly on the small and medium sizes of the ships. I'm involved in the LNG sector. I'm developing with my colleagues the LNG bunkering vessel and the small LNG carriers, which we are trying to sell to the customers locally here in Europe. But also as a Seatech, we are, let's say, involved in the light gray ships, fishing boats, small passenger vessels. And also we have the very big part of our, let's say, income is coming from retrofit, because we are doing from the beginning, from the feasibility studies up to the 3D scanning up to the retrofit. So, and there is a start of my repetition of the slides which we showed previously. There are some environmental challenges, local and global. Local, I fully agree with my colleague from Wärtsilä that we have to focus on the local, let's say, part a lot, and then then we have also take care about the global aspects. Of course, from the local, we have this acid rains, we have this particulate matters, and the SOx and NOx is mainly responsible for the acid rains. What we see with those beautiful forests which are destroyed by the acid rains, and of course greenhouse effect, when the main responsible is this CO2. And of course, the famous poster, there is no planet B, so definitely we have to do something with this. This is not only because we have to fulfill the IMO rules, but because we are, let's say, human beings who are living on this planet, and we have to do something to save this planet, because there is no other way to escape. So let's start from the LNG as a transition fuel. This again repetition of the slide, which showing this environmental, let's say, emissions from the LNG, which is coming from the methane, and of course we have the CO2, which is reduction only by the 20% from the conventional diesel fuels. But for example, NOx, we have the 85% from the SOx, almost 100, in particular is also almost 100. There is a slide taken from the DNV presentation, but however from the 2019, because I don't want to, let's say, split these carbon neutral fuels to the different fuels, because frankly speaking, personally, I don't know which kind of carbon neutral fuel will be on the future. I suppose that let's say, I believe that it will be bio LNG, because you can see on the green, the LNG still is playing the very important role as a future for the maritime industry, probably because of this volumetric energy density. As you see, for the 1 cubic meter of the volume on board the ship, with the conventional fuels, we have 36.6 gigajoule, but for the LNG, we have something like a 40% less. But if we compare with the other fuels, for example, hydrogen, it is 1/5 of the volume. So that means that the ships in the future cannot be, let's say, the cargo carriers. They should be fuel carriers, which is probably a little bit against the, let's say, the normal sea trades, let's say, against the normal sea let's say, trades which we have now and which we had in the past. So, and now I would like to a little bit explain about the technical aspects. This is quite probably you know very well this all details about the LNG fuel systems on board the ships. But however, I would like to repeat, because this is proven technology developed, I don't know, 25 years on the normal ships, but on the LNG carriers, it's developed in the 60s or 70s. So this is nothing new. This is proven technology, and I suppose that also it apologize. And also I would like to show you that this is proven, and how to say, we can really trust for this everything which we have on board. And slowly also the crew members are getting familiar with the installations on board. And on the beginning there was some kind of afraid, but now they are more or less, let's say, quite normal with this. So what I would like to show you, what we have on as the main components of the fuel gas supply system. Of course, we should have the LNG tanks. Later I will describe you in the more details about what we have here. We have the fuel gas preparations room. This is this magic room when we are doing this hocus pocus and we are creating from the liquid the gas. We have, of course, the bunkering stations, because we need this LNG how to be taken on board. We have relief masts just for the emergency purposes. If the pressure inside the tank will grow up tremendously, to avoid an explosion, we have the relief mast. But however, oxidization of the methane is prohibited, because methane is 70% much more harmful than the CO2. So we have, of course, the pipes, the gas valve unit, which is dosing the gas from the fuel gas preparation to the engine. Here are the valves and all what is steering the amount of the gas injected to the engines. We have the main engines, 2-stroke or 4-stroke. We have pure gas or dual fuel. We have propulsion line, and of course generating sets. Let's concentrate on the tanks. We have according to the IMO, we have the 4 groups of the tanks. We have the independent tanks and integral tanks. For the independent tanks, we have the 3 groups, type A, B, and C. Type E is quite new technology, but maybe not new, because this is old, but first time in, I don't know, 3 years ago was used on board in the ship on the Saga LNG carriers built in China. The Wärtsilä gas system was involved in the cargo handling system, but for the cargo containment system, there was a Norwegian company, LNT Box, was involved. And there was a first application of this A-type LNG tanks. We have the spherical, most famous, because when we close the eyes and somebody will ask us for the LNG carriers, we can see these beautiful ships with this balls on the decks. This is exactly spherical most types developed in the 60s in the most maritime in Norway. We have prismatic tanks developed by the Ishigawa shipyard in Japan. Outside of the Japan is very seldom to use this technology, but in Japan, those two technologies are still quite, let's say, often we can see. And most popular for the small sizes, the C-type technology, we can have the single shell or double shell. We can have the, of course, the bilob. In theory, you can have the tri-lobes, four lobes, and the other lobes. But however, for time being, I saw only one application of the tri-lobes in Sino-Pacific shipyard for the ethylene carrier. But most popular are still the bilob solutions. And of course, membrane tanks, integral. We have the one company who developed this and patented this system, this GTT French company. They have several types of the membranes, the Mark III, NO36, next one, NO96 Max. So this is applicable for the big LNG carriers and also for the ships which have on board very big LNG tanks. Now I would like to tell you a little bit about the fuel gas preparation. That the slides are taken. Let's say we receive it from a Norwegian company, Hoglund Marine Solutions, and also for the German part, Hoglund Gas System. We had the honor to work a little bit with this company. We developed with them the complete 3D engineering of this fuel gas preparation system inside. This is exactly the way how to in this inside we have the all equipment which is necessary to make this LNG, to make the gas from the liquid, from the LNG. There are exactly the heaters or vaporizers which we need for the vaporization of the LNG, and we have this pressure build unit which is taking a small part of the LNG, warming up the LNG, and the gas is injected here just to increase the pressure to pump away the gas to the engine. But this is applicable only for the engines which are running with the injection pressure below 8 bars. For the above 8 bars, like MAN 2-stroke, WinGD 2-stroke, and also Wärtsilä new 31 engine, we need the higher pressure, so definitely we need some pumps. Some other components like LNG bunkering stations, it can be the skidded station for the retrofit project, or also it can be built in the structure. What is important, we should have on the bunkering station this water curtain, which protecting the ship structure against the dropping of the LNG. Because if we will have the drops of the LNG, which will land on the steel structure, the steel structure is from the normal steel, and then immediately this structure will crack. So we have to protect somehow, and the water curtain is for the protection of the side of the ship. We have the gas relief mast in case of the pressure is increased so much. We are, let's say, venting up the gas. We have the gas valve unit. This is a picture from the Wärtsilä gas valve unit, which we are using to, let's say, to steer the amount of the gas which is injected to the engine. And of course, we have the pipes. We have the single pipes on the open decks or in the compartments where we have the hazardous zone. That means that all equipment in this compartment is AX. If we have the normal compartments, we have to use the double walls. As also in the normal compartment, this gas valve unit is in the special, let's say, sealed envelope. So this is just outside is safe area, and also outside of this pipes is a safe area. Inside of the pipes, between this inner pipe and the outer pipe, we have this inert gas and also a lot of gas sensors. In case of any leakage, we have alarm, and we have this emergency shutdown system. I have I would like to present you some animation which I received from my colleagues from Wärtsilä. So there are different types of the gas engines. Probably you know very well this technology, so I would like to very quick to run through these animations. Of course, we have the gas diesel. Oh, sorry, We have the gas diesel, which is running with the high pressure gas, which is injected to the piston chamber, and there is this explosion and then combustion and outlet of the exhaust gases. We have the spark gas, which is normally, let's say, like we have on the petrol cars, we have this igniter, which is giving the spark is igniting the gas. And we have, of course, the dual fuel technology, which is, for example, very typical for the dual fuel four-stroke engines, which are in the portfolios Wärtsilä of MAN, MAK. So there are, let's say, this dual fuel is most popular because this system has the redundancy built in the vessel. But here, for example, on the spark gas engines, we need the redundancy for the different than gas propulsion system. Therefore, we should have, for example, the second diesel engines, or we should have the second independent gas engine with the independent fuel line. So the biggest and the most powerful LNG fueled engine, there was a WinGD. This is former Sulzer, former Wärtsilä two-stroke engine developed in Switzerland, in Winterthur, built in China, and this is the engine of the power is around 64 megawatts, running on the, let's say, on the diesel and also on the LNG, as the diesel is, of course, the pilot fuel. And this engine is installed on the, for time being, the biggest LNG fueled ships. This is also the biggest container vessel, 23,000 TEU container vessel, CMA CGM Jacques Sade. This is the first vessel of the series of the 14 ships, or 12 ships. But however, as CMA CGM announced, till the end of the 2024, they will have the fleet of the 24 big container vessel running on the LNG. And on the side of the vessel, you can see also the biggest LNG bunkering vessel for time being. This is 18,500 cubic meter LNG tanks on board of this bunkering vessel. The same volume is on board of this container vessel. So this bunkering vessel is used mainly for this giant. She is operating in the Rotterdam area, is bunkering those big giants, but also on the other ships. On both vessels, we have the membrane tanks. And now the bio LNG, whatever we would like to eat. If you are meat eater or if you are vegetarian, we are, let's say, together with the meat, we are generating a lot of products which can be, let's say, helpful for the production of the biomethane. That means which after the liquefaction will be bio LNG. So 8 billion people need to eat something, and of course it is shame for the whole human being that we have the areas on the world that they are starving. But I suppose that sooner or later everybody will have the, let's say, the food on the world, and then you can imagine how big this agriculture industry is. And if you will accommodate the waste from this big industry, we will have tremendous amount of the biofuel. Of course, this biogas is very popular technology. This is picture taken in Poland, but however, is this popular technology from the, I don't remember, but in 70s, even when I was a kid, I saw a lot of biogas installations. But of course, the biogas, the methane number is, as Mr. Portin said, the meter number is 50-70%. It is still too bad to burn in the internal combustion engine, but however, after the liquefaction and after the treatment, we will have the excellent biomethane. And again, the same picture as presented in Wärtsilä presentation. This is the biggest bio LNG plant in Norway. And what is important, you can see here, there is not only the food, but also there is the wood and everything which is growing on the world, on the earth, let's say. We can ferment and we can generate, let's say, biomethane, because The biomethane is the same like the methane from the fossil fuel. And for the regarding the installation, we will use the same installations more or less. So everything which we will prepare for LNG, we can use on the bio LNG. And this is the picture from the company who is, let's say, investigating the using bio LNG in the trucks. But I suppose for the marine industry, it will be more or less the same. For the blending of the LNG with the bio LNG with the LNG, we are by the 17% of the blending, so we are receiving 34 reduction of the greenhouse gases. But even if we run on the 100% of the bio LNG, the total, let's say, greenhouse gases emission will be even less by the 30% than we will compare with the LNG. So in the end, I like very much this movie because I grew up in the 80s. So Back to the Future, I hope that you remember one of the scene in the last of the first episode, when this crazy scientist is using the waste to fuel his DeLorean. And I suppose that this should be the future. The bio-LNG will be the future, and the bio-LNG will replace the LNG. I'm really very enthusiastic about the hydrogen. About ammonia and methanol, maybe less, but however, I suppose that those fuel will be, let's say, still the amount of the fuels used in the maritime industry will be much smaller than the bio-LNG. So thank you very much.
So yeah, Krzysztof, thank you for the very colorful and very interesting way of presenting the introduction of bio-LNG into the picture and blending it with LNG. There are not particular questions to your presentation to you now, but I'm sure something will come up into the discussion panel. So please stay with us for the discussion panel. We are slightly behind schedule now, and I would like to have a well-deserved break for everyone, and to join us in 10 minutes time, or shall we keep it much more straightforward at 11 Central European time? In 12 minutes from now, please join us for the discussion panel, where all fellow speakers will join and will be moderated by a representative from DNV. For more information, please join us at 11 Central European time to continue with the second part of our webinar. Thank you. See you later. So good morning and thank you for joining us again for the second session of our webinar today, InnoDays’21. And now we will have the opportunity to join a discussion panel, which is will be attended by all our fellow speakers today. And just 1 second. Yep. So, dear colleagues, we will have a discussion panel on the topic of the future of LNG and Bio LNG as a transition fuel. We will have all our fellow speakers joining us for the panel as well. With panel will be led by Mr. Radosław Kubiszewski from DNV and Polish LNG and Bio LNG platform. As well, we will have a speaker, Mr. Kai Portin, the general manager from Varsila, Finland, on behalf of our partner today, to join the discussion panel. So, I can see Mr. Radosław Kubiszewski, who is available now and can take the stage and lead us through the panel. So, Radosław, if you're ready, please.
Thank you, Emil. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of DNV and Polish Bio LNG and LNG platform, it is my great pleasure to facilitate the discussion at the end of this very interesting webinar. And gentlemen, the race towards net zero emission is on, and LNG is gaining, in my opinion, very polarized publicity. Perhaps LNG is not the end game, but surely it is the starting point to zero. And it seems that these days everyone has subject matter opinion, and having you as an industry experts on that panel, it is actually a very good question to ask whether LNG is actually transitional fuel, or is it the bridge and there is a rainbow at the end of the bridge, or perhaps with the development of younger brothers, Bio LNG and synthetic methane, it is a fuel in transition. And with that, I would like to ask first question to Kai from Varsila. Kai, what kind of options does the ship owner have to stay compliant beyond 2030, choosing LNG propulsion for potential new build vessel right now?
Yeah, here we have had a clear answer, and I thought also I tried to get it out. It's to be flexible, because we have we think we have one world, but we have many places in the world that are looking at different fuels, different ways to operate, and what you don't want to have is something that you cannot use. And the second thing is you always want to be good. So when you choose a vessel of today, you want to choose something, a fuel and a system that is the best today, but will still be good for tomorrow. And here I see the path with LNG, that you know today that this is a good path today, and still you build up the infrastructure for on the vessel and outside the vessel for also being compliant with new fuels coming in. And then the easiest, of course, is Bio LNG and synthetic LNG, but also with other fuel by being flexible.
So very good highlight on flexibility, Kai. Thank you for that. And talking about the infrastructure, may I then direct the question to Mr. Jan from Liquid? And can you tell us a bit with the development of biomethane, and perhaps in the very near future, also with the more widespread availability and accessibility to synthetic LNG, what are the logistic and supply chain challenges with that infrastructure and this development for those fuels? Do you see any, and how do you see that problem?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Yeah, overall, it is quite new still, right? So Bio LNG is used already by a few companies, but most of them use it for test cases only. Main reason is definitely the price, because in the end, to make a fuel attractive for customers, there has to be some way that they can either get their money back through some other ways, or that an investment in such fuel is actually economically attractive. And so bio-LNG is starting. I think when you look at the last years, then there have been a few projects now where they have been developed. On the other hand, the marine sector there is competing with the use of bio-LNG for trucks. Especially when I look at Germany, the way the German funding system is designed, there is going to be a lot of bio-LNG used in the next years and less fossil LNG, which means these volumes will not be available for the marine sector because there's no such funding available there yet. At the same time, when you look at the infrastructure, then most of these projects that we are looking at, and we are currently involved in roughly 20 bio-LNG projects, not only in Germany, but also in other countries in Europe, then they are significantly smaller than the plants that produce LNG, which means the infrastructure is also completely different. And most of these places are not located directly at the sea where you could easily load a vessel or bunker a vessel. So you have to transport it by truck. And then you have to find a way actually how you get larger amounts of that into customer vessels. I think for the time being, we are fine there because most companies that want to use bio-LNG do it as a blend. So they say, okay, they want 10% or 20% of their fuel to be bio-LNG, and the rest of it is still fossil LNG. And those customers you can actually supply by truck. So you don't need a bunker vessel for that. But when you look at it in the long term, and when we also, I think there was also a question from the audience regarding this initiative now from several shippers, including Amazon and Unilever. When you look at these initiatives, then I think there will be more bio-LNG used in the future. When we look at this initiative, especially, they don't want LNG anymore because it's a fossil fuel. And I think that's also what we are saying. It's a good reason to build up the infrastructure, but obviously it's a fossil fuel. It offers some potential to reduce emissions, but it's definitely not the solution that gives you a 100% reduction. So if there's more bio-LNG in the future, then I think we need other ways to do that. And I guess we will see more plants also being developed closer to ports, or that somehow have the availability to load bio-LNG also in larger amounts into vessels.
So definitely there will need to be kind of redesigned infrastructure considering bio-LNG as a potential blending or standalone fuel.
Yeah, not redesign, but definitely I think what we can see already, some of the larger terminals are working on equipping themselves with means to produce bio-LNG, for example, by using the infrastructure that they have, for example, the reliquefaction units that you have at the larger terminals. In the end, these terminals are connected to the gas grid, so they can use biogas and therefore can also produce bio-LNG. And some terminals, for example, in Zeebrugge, are already working on that. So I think we will definitely see a wider range of products also offered by larger terminals. But at the same time, I would also say there will be, and it a little bit goes back to what we said already before, we have to be flexible, right? And I think there's not going to be one way to receive bio-LNG. I think there's going to be more ways. And I think it will be a little bit more decentralized than what we see right now, where everything is basically built around these large import terminals.
Mm-hmm. I will just ask you one more question because I'm very interested in the infrastructure development, and Kai mentioned that flexibility. It was also highlighted in your presentation, Jan. And I'm talking here about the Avenir advantage as an example of this kind of partnership and flexibility, that we are moving away maybe from dedicated infrastructure in given point, but being more accessible globally. Do you think that as a potentially widespread of opportunities for LNG?
Yeah, definitely. Transport LNG. And at the same time, they are also large enough to operate independently from a large import terminal. So they can stay away for a few weeks before they actually have to return, which allows them also to conduct bunkering operations in areas where maybe there's no permanent infrastructure yet. And at the same time, because there is this growing number of vessels, we will also see more flexibility when it comes to bunkering. And it goes a little bit back to what I said already before about the about the Baltic Sea. So a lot of bunkering operations are not taking place anymore in ports. So they are taking place at anchorage areas, which allows vessels that are just passing by to get their fuel. They don't have to go into the port. It saves costs, it saves time. And in the end, with still a new product like LNG, even though it's already done now for nearly a decade, I think you don't want to add any extra hurdles that makes it harder to receive the fuel for ship owners. And therefore, I think flexibility is key. Cooperation is key. So I think you cannot develop that whole market just by yourself. I think we have to work together. And I think that's also what is done in the industry to help customers, especially with vessels that are not staying anymore just in one region. And I think that's also what we see from this growing fleet of vessels. Those are not the small vessels anymore that are operating only at the Norwegian coast like it was 10 years ago. So they are operating on a global scale. They are operating between the US or in Europe or Europe and Asia. And so they need supply in different areas. And I think you can only achieve that if you are either flexible enough to help them in different regions, or you find a way to partner up with someone else that helps them in other regions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jan, very much. And with that flexibility, one back the question regarding regulations. We are in the maritime industry become a bit rigid and maybe archaic in the approach. That is just my opinion. But I would like to ask DNV representative, Mr. Adam, with ship owners having a bright choices, or let's say wide choices with the decarb pathways, there are dilemma not only on the financial consequences, but also on the regulatory compliance, and especially future compliance. How regulatory body like classification societies are helping the maritime industry to navigate in those rough waters?
Yes. So one of this answer was given in my presentation. It's the carbon robust model which we offer. How to navigate through this decarbonization stairway, how it's called. But except that, of course, we also established the independent advisory unit, which may help in a couple of items. First of all, mention the EXI. We offer the EXI calculator, which simplify the process of assessment of the fleet. The same story about the CII. We developed the CII dashboard, such in a way of the portal, so it's accessible from all location around the world. That's of course very touchful way and the tools. And from the other side, if you are strictly talking about the regulatory bodies, so DNV of course have their representative in the working committee on the both levels, IMO, MEPS, and as well at the EU Commission when it's discussion on the Fit for 55. So of course we must be active because we are part of this market and an important player, I would say. So if we will not be active, there will be with no owners, there will be no classification society, let's say. So maybe that is the best conclusion on that question. But if I may, I would also like to refer a little bit to this statement of the companies which claim not to use, actually to use the zero emission fuels. So it is not that LNG is banned as a totally. They actually will refuse the fossil LNG, but absolutely the bio LNG and synthetic or e-LNG received from partly from renewables and the sequestration of the dioxide carbon. It's absolutely on the table, and one of the important owner, which is CMA CGA, actually answer in that way that they will switch these vessels to the synthetic LNG in a closer or farther future. So I believe that the blending with the LBG and synthetic gases, of course, what was said by Krzysztof and Kai, the bio LNG needs some treatment because of the purity, it has to be compliant. But that will be the future. The methane will not disappear because we need a flexibility in the energy system at all. So that's not the chance that all energy system globally will switch to total renewables, because this is not yet fully flexible and it's not fully sustainable. So definitely there will be still a place. The question only is which percentage of the market will be methane and its different composition.
The question which you just now, Adam, answer was, I think, asked by the panel, by the viewers on YouTube, and that was actually a question on the Financial Times publication, which stated that big global retailers like Amazon, IKEA, Unilever will cut LNG ship from their logistic chain by 2040. And we already mentioned that we are actually seeing that movement to bio and synthetic LNG will actually keep those vessels afloat, most likely. And one question, Adam, from my end, actually, what about the preparation, for example, for green hydrogen for the vessels which are built with LNG propulsion right now? I know that the Wärtsilä is already working on some kind of blending possibility, which is not yet, I think, proven. But what about the class side or regulatory bodies? Do we offer any ready to build or anything like that guideline for those ship owners who are interested in this transition?
At this stage, if we are talking about the hydrogen itself, there is only a case-by-case approval, and the principle is easy. The safety of the vessel has to be the same as on the conventional fuel. So yes, of course, there is a possibility, and there is an let's say open track for that. We are growing with the competence and the knowledge based on the ongoing projects. So definitely it is possible. But if we are waiting for the strict rules, there is also let's say a gap from the regulatory point of view. So this is the only way we could fill up this gap. So we only need to consider as a case-by-case or alternative design. That's how we can as well meet such a description. So we are still missing the regulation on the hydrogen. It's more clear on the LNG. It's nowadays more clear on the methanol, even if you look on the IGC code. So the situation is dynamic, and then actually the regulatory needs to catch up with the market nowadays. That's the situation we have.
Thank you, Adam, for that. Question to Krzysztof from CITEC. With a proven propulsion technology, which you nicely explained with your presentation, what actually biomethane can be applied at this very moment, let's talk about the obvious question. What is the cost markup related to blending bio LNG to LNG? Krzysztof, are you with us? Hi.
Yes, it's difficult to answer because from the, let's say, technical point of view, if you will have the two, let's say, tracks, one with the LNG and second one with the bio LNG, the cost is almost zero because we are using the same, let's say, installation. But if we will go for the complete chain, they will be different because the bio LNG is still developing. According to the latest news from the European Biogas Association, the production of the bio LNG in Europe in 2020 was 100 tons per day, but in 2021 is 500. And it's forecasted that in the 2022, it will be something like a 900 or 850. So it is, of course, this is also related to the price of the bio LNG. But for the time being, it's difficult to compare the bio LNG price with the LNG price due to this problem how to let's say with the where to find the bio LNG exactly. We have, of course, the in Norway big plant. We have the plant in close to Oslo, and the buses in Oslo area are running on the bio LNG. But yeah, unfortunately, I let's say cannot give you the straight answer. But from the technical point of view, is the same installation. So we don't need some additional compressors, additional pipelines. No, we are using the same what we have now prepared for the LNG.
It will be maybe also interesting to see how the EU taxation will develop in terms of fossil LNG and biomethane, because that might be also actually something to support the development of needed infrastructure.
That's true.
Thank you, Krzysztof. Again, that is proven technology, no doubt. We have facilities. The problem is actually that the cost markup, it is not easy to evaluate at this very point. And most likely it will come in the years to, in the future years. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and I would like to address it to you all. First one is what is the panelists' view on liquid hydrogen supply availability in Europe, Baltic region beyond 2025? That is open question, not everybody at the same time, please.
Yeah, maybe I can quickly start. Having worked for the Linde Group beforehand, where we actually had exactly these questions as well already in the past years, and we compared the availability of and prices of LNG and hydrogen. In the end, if you would look at the map right now, the availability of hydrogen is rather limited, especially when we talk about the marine industry. The volumes that we would need to supply a significant number or substantial number of vessels with hydrogen, it's just not feasible right now, honestly. And that was the result that we had back then. And Linde is one of the larger producers of hydrogen. And even we weren't able to find sufficient amounts for larger vessels. I think when you look at single vessels or single projects, I think it's possible to supply these vessels. When we look at the next years, I'm sure there's also a lot of development in this field, and I think there's going to be substantially larger production facilities for that. I think the question is also about, and I think that's the more important question, what type of hydrogen is it, right? So in the end, everyone is just talking about hydrogen, but in the end, what they all want to achieve, you can only really achieve with green hydrogen. And then you have to question, where does this energy come from to produce hydrogen? If you would use just like conventional hydrogen, so to say, I think the achievement for the environment is rather small. Like the advantage is doesn't have any advantage compared to LNG. But if we talk about green hydrogen, I think also in the future, the production capacities will be rather scarce. And especially because there's so many different industry sectors now looking at using hydrogen. I would say most of the green hydrogen is going to be used actually in the heavy industry. So for larger industrial facilities and not really in transport. So I would say the availability will still be rather small in the next years.
Adam, you have a comment?
Yes, I have a comment, and maybe not a comment, but additional supplied information. So I fully agree with Jan that the most important question is about the availability of the green hydrogen. So nowadays we have one installation on the green hydrogen on Orkan Island area. But this is not for the commercial sale. It's supply the local community for the energy. This is one thing. Then we have one installation under construction, let's say, and ready to be used in 2023. And this is a joint effort with the Maersk in Denmark. But that will be mainly utilized to transfer for the e-methanol. So I don't believe that will be the high volume available for the pure hydrogen trade. And then we have another project in the North Norway by the Liquind, also to be open in 2023. So this is the most known one. From our local, let's say, Baltic area, what I have known, Lotos nowadays has R&D project, but this is very small scale. So the green hydrogen nowadays is very, very limited. And if you are look for the energy transition outlook published in the beginning of the September, I mean, of course, the DNV energy transition outlook, we expect the real accessibility for the green hydrogen will be in about 8 to 10 years. So it pretty much depends on the intensity of the investments, but the investment process also take time, and we have no infrastructure. So we are all waiting for the green hydrogen produced from the off-grid installation. Either it's the offshore wind, either this is the hydrogen volley, but they are still under development stage. So that's the one thing. If we are talking about brown or gray hydrogen, this is available, but this is let's say a battle with the fertilizers producers. So the price nowadays is sky high. So definitely that must be first of all the incentiveness from the, for example, EU, what you mentioned on the RED directive, and we are actually wait for the time that the hydrogen is available.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good comment. We have one also comment from the YouTube channel, and maybe Kai, I would like to ask you to comment on that. The comment is that the person believed that blending with less than 25% of liquid hydrogen with LNG, the design can be considered as LNG design. Could you offer comment to that?
Yes, we already in 2015, so 6 years ago, we released that in our gas engines, we can utilize up to 25% hydrogen. Now it says liquid hydrogen here, but hydrogen as such. And the reason mainly was that on land power plants, for example, in Germany, that they would start to add hydrogen into the natural gas pipe, and to see how much can you add into the pipe system and still be able to operate with our power plants. And for me as an engine developer, I don't really care if it's marine or power plant. So then we made the technology for utilizing up to 25% at that time. Why we stopped at 25, and this is also now important for marine, is that the legislation standards, they are changing if you have more than 25% hydrogen. So on a vessel, as you cannot have natural gas or LNG in the same tank as you have liquid hydrogen, because then the hydrogen will boil off first of all. So you have to have them separately. There you will always have an area where you have pure hydrogen and where you have the other fuel, if it's then LNG. And then we need to have classified or approved products, both for the fuel systems and also for the engine itself, to have all the components that are hydrogen compatible. And this we are now working on, and we have been running now here the last weeks, months, we have been running on pure hydrogen, an engine here in the laboratory about 100 meters behind me where I'm sitting. And that is to really see what do we really need for pure hydrogen operation. And then after that, when we know that, we can know different blending ratios from then up to 25 today, but then also higher. So ongoing work. And if I also add a little bit to what the previous question about the liquid hydrogen, we are perhaps used to in marine to be last in line. So there are many uptakers of the hydrogen before we can see that, first of all, that it's made to liquid hydrogen, and then also then to be sent out to marine side. So here I think it will take some time before we get it, but that is not hindering us from making the technology ready. And as I see that it also comes a little bit faster than on the land side, on our power plants in energy business.
It's a very good comment. And actually, this volume ramp up, it will apply to also other biofuels and definitely green ammonia, which we did not talk about, but I think that is pretty much the same topic. I do not see any more comments from the YouTube channel. And any one of you would like to ask any final thoughts on the topic of transition of LNG or LNG in transition as a fuel? I think we pretty much cover all the angles in this discussion. So I would like to thank you very much for the very good and very informative, not only panel discussion, but the presentation. I make a lot of notes for myself, and covering the topic from very starting point to actually having options to get to the net zero. I think it is important nowadays to talk about it more and actually repeat the message that partnership and diversity, flexibility are key factors towards that journey. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And I would like to thank you, Mr. Kubiszewski, for moderating this very good panel, active and compact with direct questions, starting from the focus of the future and concrete on what is currently now. And we touch as well the future of the new and hydrogen fuels coming into the picture. Thank you to the fellow speakers as well. I would like to follow up with a short summary, if I can. Well, from all the presentations today and the panel, we've seen that the LNG, bio LNG, synthetic LNG is in the mix. It's the step forward. And it is on the path leading to decarbonization. We need to continuously repeat and introduce that again and again to be understood. And LNG, bio LNG is holding the strong position to be the current transition fuel and to remain for the next few decades. We've seen that by 2050, the dominance of oil in the fuel mix will be displaced by low and zero carbon fuels. Nevertheless, LNG and bio LNG will hold about 41% of the share. So it still will be present then at that time. This is a forecast by the leading societies predicting. However, from my point of view, mentioned as well by the speakers, it is important to highlight that LNG is not anymore highly prioritized by the EU Commission and the associated co-financing programs. We currently have seen, even in the CEF2, which was published, that LNG is not as highly prioritized as a new hydrogen-based fuel. And it's not how it's been for the last 10 years. Now the main priority will be given to hydrogen-based fuels and so on projects. So to summarize everything, excellent presentation by speakers, starting with key estimation and findings and latest on LNG infrastructure and bulk marine vessels, and introduction of bio LNG, the blending of LNG into the picture. Great discussion panel highlighting the regulations, future compliance and financial consequences to the ship owners, LNG logistic and supply chain challenges. So dear colleagues, today we had attendees from all across Europe and great interaction with the guests today, questions from the audience and comments. I would like to mention that all presentation and the entire video recording will be shared with the participants today. Once again, thank you to the presenters and event partners and all colleagues joining us today, and hope to see you soon all. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.